I would describe it as deeply disappointing if that is happening, and I am as angry as the Prime Minister is about it, and that's why, after internal inquiries, he took the decision, and I think was right to do so, to suspend some of those candidates that are standing in the election. So I think the right steps have been taken.
We woke up this morning to two more reports of Conservative figures involved in some form of betting. A Conservative politician in the Welsh Parliament is now being investigated over a bet on the timing of the general election. And then there's the puzzling case of the Conservative Cabinet Minister, Alistair Jack, who has admitted to placing 3 bets on the date of the general election in the weeks before Rishi Sunak's election announcement. Now, he is not under any investigation by the Gambling Commission, and this only came to light because earlier this month he joked to the BBC that he had made a very specific amount, £2,100 from one of the bets. Let's speak to the most loyal member of the Tory morning interview team. It's Mel Stride, who's the Work and Pensions Secretary. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Asma.
There's quite a lot going on, isn't there, really? I know that there is a Labour involvement in this too, and we're going to speak to Labour about that. But in terms of the Conservatives, there are 5 Conservatives being investigated for possible cheating, and support has been withdrawn from 2 of them, Laura Saunders and Craig Williams. I wonder which words you would use to sum up this situation.
Well, it's deeply unsatisfactory that anybody should, if it is proven to be the case, use inside information in this way. And obviously the Gambling Commission is continuing its inquiries. We need to await the outcome of that to establish those as facts or otherwise. So I would describe it as deeply disappointing if that is happening, and I am as angry as the Prime Minister is about it, and that's why, after internal inquiries, he took the decision, and I think was right to do so, to suspend some of those candidates that are standing in the election. So I think the right steps have been taken. But what is most disappointing, Asma, is that we're a matter of days away now from a very big decision the country has to take in a general election. And some of the really big things in play, and I'm not dismissing the things that we're discussing for 1 second, but there are issues about the future of our country, having turned around the economy, getting taxes down under the Conservatives, or raising taxes under Labour,
which we should be talking about. Yes,
which
I understand your point. I do understand your point.
Not being scrutinised to the extent that I think it should.
Well, no, and you may be right, and there's some people who are saying that. However, the problem is this is a problem that's being created by these people, 5 of whom are Conservatives. Now, I just wanted to clarify one thing with you, because you've said that the Commission is investigating this and we have to wait. That was very much Rishi Sunak's line until Monday morning. And then obviously something changed because the investigation is still going on, but support was withdrawn from 2 of them, from Laura Saunders and Craig Williams. So something's clearly happened there, hasn't it?
Well, as I say, there would have been internal inquiries around exactly what happened going on, I should imagine, from the moment that this issue surfaced. And clearly, it's not unreasonable for it to take a little bit of time, depending on the circumstances. And you and I don't know what those are and what's needed to be investigated, and questions that needed to be asked and so on. It's not unreasonable for that to take just a little bit of time in some circumstances. That is how I see this as having happened. And as I say, very clear and decisive action has been taken by the Prime Minister, and they are not supported by the Conservative Party in the election. And further, if in time it is proven by the Gambling Commission that wrongdoing occurred, then those people will be removed swiftly from the Conservative Party.
Of course, but the point I'm making, I suppose, is that something clearly has been either discovered or bolstered in some way for support to be withdrawn, because that's an extra step, isn't it? That's the point. Something's clearly happened. We don't know what it is, but something's been concluded or found.
Well, I think if you're saying that in any investigation a conclusion is arrived at and something resulted in that conclusion happening, then of course that is absolutely logical. So one assumes that the internal inquiries that would have been going on in the Conservative Party led to that conclusion, that it was appropriate to withdraw support from those candidates. The Prime Minister then promptly did that. It's a major step to make, and he was right to make it. And I know he has been thoroughly angered by the whole situation, because, as I say, this is taking up now a lot of airtime. We're
Yes.
discussing at length. I know there's interest in this, and there
Mm.
should be, but there should equally be a lot of interest in whether we're going to have a Conservative government that's going to get taxes down or a Labour
Okay,
government.
I know,
Uh,
and let's hope, Mel Stride, let's hope there's not any more of these, because then we're going to have to talk about it again. And the reason being is that this is something that is very much swallowing up the oxygen of this particular campaign. It's dominated the news for a fortnight. That is more than a third of the campaign.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the point that I'm taking and I'm making. And we've now had an example of a Labour candidate who's apparently betted against himself to win in the very seat that he's standing in. And there
Yes,
may be some, who knows, from across different parties. But my point is that there's something hugely important about to happen in a matter of days.
yes.
It will affect us for at least the next 5 years. Labour have said they're going to, for example, give votes to 16-year-olds, which is going to embed their advantage going forward. So we could be talking about the next 10 years. And I think people need to be focusing, and we need to be focusing on areas like tax. And I know I know you want to get back to betting, but let's focus on this for a minute, Asma.
Well, I've got
Just
well.
just for a minute.
You
But
are
the big
right.
thing
Well,
on the
listen,
ballot,
but
but I
Mel
am
Stride,
right. I am right.
we
Yeah.
have some
Thank
time.
you.
We
Thank you,
have
Rita.
some time, and you have managed to get a few of your messages out. So well done. I want to ask you about Alistair Jack. He's the Scottish Secretary. He said he was joking, but actually he had bet on the election. But that's very bizarre. That is bizarre behaviour from a cabinet minister, isn't it? To say, "Oh, I'm just joking. I didn't do any betting," and actually he did.
Well, I don't know. I mean, look, if politicians are criticised for being too serious and out of touch with people and need to loosen up a bit on the one hand, and on the other hand, if they make a joke here or there or whatever, they're jumped on for being too frivolous. Look, the important thing with Alistair, I think, is the fact, as I've said, that the bet that he or bets or whatever it may have been that he
Mm,
played did not occur in May. He's very clear that he has not broken any of the rules
mm.
and is not indeed being investigated
Of course.
by the
I'm really
gambling
interested,
commission.
Mel Stride, because I've
Maybe
never,
so. I'm
I've never
guessing
come
I don't
across
know. I
this.
didn't
I've
hear.
never come across this before. And I'm just really interested, actually. Is it okay for politicians, for MPs, for members of the cabinet to be betting on things like the election day? Is that all right in your mind?
So I think you're moving into now the broader issue of what is appropriate and what's not appropriate for politicians to bet on in the political world. And I
Mm,
actually think that if anything else comes out of this, it will be the fact that we will need to have this debate. Where is that dividing line? And it is quite complicated because there are so many blurred edges in this. I mean, for example, if I were to tell you today
mm.
that I knew of a politician who betted on the result or the outcome of a general election in 10 to 20 years' time, I don't think you'd have a problem with that. But clearly, if it's somebody that had inside information the day before an announcement was made, as we've established, we definitely
Okay.
do. So I think
Apparently it's
just to
quite
work
common,
out
and
what
I'm interested, actually. Have you ever done it? Have you ever placed any kind of bet on any kind of political outcome at all?
Asma, I'm so sorry to disappoint you this morning. There's no gotcha around
N-
me, I'm afraid. I,
No, it's a
I,
yes.
I,
It's a yes or no,
I
really.
never, no, it's a no. It's a strong
Okay,
no. No,
fantastic.
no, I just don't bet, I'm afraid. I'm just one of those people
Mm.
that has never been attracted to gambling.
Yeah, well, you and me both, Mel Stride. I want to just ask you very quickly about how long this has all taken. Labour has acted very quickly over Kevin Craig. Rishi Sunak's taken about 2 weeks, and George Osborne is not very impressed. He said, when you're in a room and you've got a scandal emerging, you've got a choice, which is to try and muddle through, and it almost never works. You think you can hide away, and that is presumably what Sunak is thinking, or you try and turn the thing into a moment for you. That's the kind of raw instinct that I think real political leaders, real strong prime ministers have. Do you agree with what he has to say?
No, I don't. And I agree with a lot of what George says, actually. I think he's a very astute political observer, but I don't agree on this because, as I've said, I think what the party has done is to have its internal inquiries to look at the issues around these candidates. What you and I and George don't know is what those discussions were, what kind of mitigating circumstances there may or may not have been, what information was required, and so on and so forth. And
Mm,
sometimes that does take a bit of time. And I think in these circumstances, you should be kind of innocent until there's information that shows that there's some guilt under those circumstances. And that sometimes does take a little bit of time. But as I say, decision has clearly been taken by the Prime Minister. No ifs or buts. At the end of the day, they are not supporters of the general election. And if in time they are found to have broken the rules, then they will be expelled from the Conservative Party. And I think the Prime Minister has been very forthright in that position.
Just a question generally then on whether, I know you talked about it needs to be looked at, politicians should be betting. We've got some people saying it doesn't really matter, move on, and other people saying it's an ethical issue. Why on earth do MPs, not just politicians, why do MPs need to bet? Shouldn't it just be banned?
Well, yeah, quite possibly. And I think we do need to have a debate about it. But as we've just established, there's no, this isn't a binary thing between one particular set of actions or not doing them. There are all sorts of different variations of gambling around politics. I mean, my personal view, I would just say that people shouldn't do it. But I think we should have a debate about it more broadly. But let me be very, very, very clear by saying that I totally recognise that using inside information, as may have been the case for certain individuals in this way, is utterly wrong.
Okay, well, that's very clear. Thank you very much for that. That's Mel Stride, can't even get his name right, and he's on all the time. Mel Stride, the Work and Pension Secretary. Thank you very much.
Politicians are implicated here. Also, are police officers. 5 more officers are being investigated by the Commission for placing bets on the timing of the election. Last week, we learned that an officer who served as part of the Prime Minister's close protection team were arrested over alleged bets. What are the rules here? Peter Blexley is former Scotland Yard detective. Peter, good morning.
Good morning.
When you are a police officer, let's just start with the real basics. What are the rules about what you can and cannot bet on?
Well, the rules apply to police officers as simply as they do everybody else. Every police officer is free to have a bet on the Grand National, the Derby, the FA Cup final. There are no restrictions on that whatsoever, nor should there be. However, of course, if, as so brilliantly laid out in the podcast clip earlier, any police officers have gained an unfair advantage by being accessing information that is confidential and otherwise would not have entered the public domain, then it may well be that they are guilty of an offence under the Gambling Act. But of course, no one's been charged yet. These are mere allegations. We shall have to wait and see how this investigation pans out.
What's your sense of this, Peter? Because I think we believe and trust, ideally, hopefully, this is the idea, that police officers are going to set the ethical standard for the rest of us.
Well, sadly, that crown has slipped dramatically. In fact, it's fallen off the head of the Metropolitan Police and other police services in recent years as they've been embroiled by scandal after scandal after scandal, many of them just being utterly abhorrent, like the rape, murder and kidnap of Sarah Everard, the appalling actions of many other police officers, and, may I point out, only yesterday a number of Metropolitan Police officers were charged, not convicted, but charged, excuse me, in relation to a punch-up, for want of a better expression, and another Met Police officer charged over sexual offences. And so this goes on and on and on. Now, the Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, was appointed in September 2022, and he vowed, of course, to change the culture, to clean up the organisation. Well, we're 3 months away from his 2-year anniversary of being in charge, and I think it's only fair that we ask the questions, how exactly is he getting on with his clean-up?
Well, how would you assess how it's gone? I mean, there has been extreme scrutiny, hotline set up for people to be able to say, look, I've got issues with said police officer, to be able to report them. He said, and we know there are going to be some individuals who tarnish the reputation of the police force. The question is whether things like vetting has been sufficient, and when there are issues that they're dealt with properly. Do you see a culture change over the last couple of years?
No, I don't. And I think what's happened, and the reason why cleaning up the Met is so important for the good cops, it's really important for good police officers. So they can go to work, they can look left, they can look right, and they can think, I'm standing alongside decent police officers as they do a very, very challenging job. And of course, it's also vital for the public. When we, in our moment of need, dial 999, we want good cops turning up. We don't want corrupt cops coming to our aid. That said, the Metropolitan Police and certain other forces have so dismantled the training structure, the vetting, the recruiting, the supervision, the management. They just threw so much of that out of the window with their need for reform, as their highly educated senior police officers with their MBAs treated policing like a business, which it isn't, and in the process of doing so, fundamentally wrecked it. So to turn this ship around is going to take a long time, but it's also going to need the courage of people to say, what we did is wrong. So much that was good, we've thrown out of the window. And in many regards, we need to reinvent the wheel.
And the question is, how do you do that? How does Sir Mark Rowley steer that transformation? Peter, thank you as ever. Peter Blexley, former Scotland Yard detective, on the news that a further 5 officers are being investigated by the Gambling Commission for placing bets on the timing of the election. I've been asking this morning if political bets as a whole should be banned. Martin, good morning, says, MPs placing a bet on the outcome of the election is not an offence unless they have inside information. Why is this so difficult to understand? I think, Martin, that the question is to what extent do we know what information they are party to? I mean, some of the allegations for this Labour candidate who's been suspended, who bet against himself to win the election, is to what extent could he then influence the outcome of what happened? Is it the same to bet against yourself winning a vote in a constituency, the same as saying, oh, I'll bet against England winning the match in the Euros because, you know, I want, regardless of the outcome, to have a win, whether that's a financial one or the emotional one of actually being victorious? Have your say this morning. Should political bets just be banned full stop?